Welcome to Riverdale, the drinking game, the podcast, the only Riverdale podcast that got abs during the summer. I'm Joe Storms.
And I'm Meredith Laboon, and we're two high school friends turned 30-something drinking buddies, reliving one of our favorite shows while playing the drinking game we made the first watch through.
Okay, so I think right now, Meredith, it would be a good time for us to explain how we came to create this podcast and why we're rewatching this show this way. So,
Yeah.
do you wanna say something about that?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be doing this with you. So where to even begin? You and I went down quite a rabbit hole the first time we watched Riverdale. And we may have accidentally created an over 100 rule drinking game along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And the drinking game kind of came to be as we were watching the episodes of the show. So, basically, how this came to be is we would spend, I don't know, most Saturdays for the better part of 2 years just binging this show together on my couch and drinking lots of beer. And then it just kind of came very organically because you and I are both toxic people who have to gamify everything. So it would be drink every time this happens, drink every time that
Yeah.
happens. And then, by the time we got to the end of the show, we had over 100 rules. So now I'm super excited to go back and rewatch everything and see how the rules stack up to the show when you have the full set of rules from the very beginning.
Yeah. Also, rewatching it now, I unironically love this show. I think it started ironic, but it's also just a good excuse for us to rewatch Riverdale and talk about it again, which I think is we like. Not that we need an excuse, but this will keep us honest, I guess.
Yeah, I completely
So
agree. I can't believe that we're doing this right now so intentionally because this
yes,
started in such a silly way. So basically, friend of the pod, Sean, told
yes,
us that we should watch this show. And we have a couple of friends of the pod that'll probably come up throughout this. But as we mentioned in the intro, we are friends from high school, and we're in this group chat on Discord with some of our other friends from high school who also in their own way contributed to some of this watch and some of the drinking game rules. But it really all started with our friend Sean, who said, hey, this show Riverdale is absolute hot garbage. You guys like trash TV, so maybe you should watch it. And I think he's really horrified and disgusted at how far we've
yeah.
taken his
We really,
advice.
we really made this our thing. Something that started out as him trying to. I don't even really know why. Like this in particular was something he was so interested in getting people in our friend group to watch because he's usually not super invested in that type of thing unless it's something he really loves. And we really just took the ball and ran with it. And he's joined us a couple times, but and he had watched basically the whole thing before we even started. But we're dedicated Riverdale fans. We've cosplayed as Riverdale characters before. We love the show. So
Yeah, we really
it's
do.
this is just continuing to build on that.
When does it stop being a joke? Does it stop being something we ironically like when we make a 100 rule drinking game? Is it when we make a podcast about the drinking game? Is it when we eventually get matching Riverdale tattoos? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that is. I think it's already stopped being a joke because I again rewatching this first episode, I was so pleasantly surprised at especially compared to other CW shows we've been watching lately. It's shocking how interesting this show is and how stylistically I think specific it is compared to a lot of what's on TV now slash on the CW in particular.
I agree. And I'm excited to see how that opinion holds up as we get deeper into the show because, like, it's not controversial that season one of this show is genuinely good and, like, critically acclaimed. But then as the
Mm-hmm.
show goes on and it becomes more and more unhinged, I think a lot of people fell off the bandwagon and they were like, I can't do this anymore. I feel like for us, that's when we got even more into the show and
Yeah.
loved how like chaotic and off the rails it is.
Y-
So I'm excited to
Yeah.
see, like right now we just watched the pilot episode, which is like a critically acclaimed episode of television that is widely considered to be good. But like
Yeah.
I'm excited for the episodes that only we think are good.
Yeah. There are definitely like hot takes out there that we will have that other people will hear and not agree with. And that's fine because this is our show and these are our opinions.
And with that said, let's go downstairs to La Bonne Nuit. Joe, what are you drinking for this episode?
So this, I was trying to think of like what would be like a good first drink. And I was trying to think of like what in this episode would be a good like inspiration for a drink. And I really latched on to Archie being a basic millennial white man. And I made the basic millennial white man of drinks. I made a Negroni, which has the added benefit of being very red colored. So we got the red-headed drink. I'm not redheaded, so this is sacrilegious. I'm drinking a cocktail that does not match my hair color, which is not
Canceled.
allowed in the town of Riverdale. But I felt like this was the move to make the basic white man of the basic white millennial man of cocktails.
I would challenge that because I don't know, as a queer woman, I feel like queer women own the Negroni now thanks to Emma
Maybe.
Darcy, but maybe that's just the Negroni Spagliato. Like
I
maybe a
think that's
classic
just
Negroni is still the
yeah,
millennial white man basic drink.
I think it's really like a man with a handlebar mustache in 2014. That was his go-to cocktail at the bar, like a white guy,
Oh,
you know.
100%. That
Yeah.
or an old fashioned because at that time he was watching Mad Men, and that is not the
Mm,
last time that Mad Men's going to come up in this episode.
I know we're going to talk about Mad Men, which was also almost, almost 20 years old. Mad Men from when it first
Don't
aired.
say
That
that.
is, I realized that watching this episode. I was like, Mad Men. You don't hear
No.
a lot about Mad Men anymore, and I'm like, 2007. We're a couple of years away from the 20th anniversary of Mad Men.
Ugh. Like,
I
I know
know.
we were in high school then, but that makes me feel so old because,
I
like,
know.
I remember watching Mad Men through college. So don't like that.
No, bad energy. What are you drinking this week, Meredith?
So I am drinking a beer which is brown and my hair is brown. So I did beat you there. But
Points.
I went to my local brewery, which is Wissahickon Brewing Co., who they're not a sponsor of this podcast, but maybe they should be at some point because
Maybe they should be.
this is like was our regular haunt basically of when we would watch the show together in person. We would usually go to Wissahickon and get some beers and then bring them back to watch the show. And I was hoping I would find the Nimbo, which
Mm,
is a beer that they do that kind of became our unofficial beer of watching Riverdale because we would call it the Himbo in honor of Archie.
mm-hmm.
So I was hoping to get some Himbo beer. Sadly, it's like a limited edition, like they don't do it all year round. So they didn't have it this time. But I got the Daybreak, which is a hazy IPA, which is also very good. And I think we've also drank together before while watching Riverdale. So it felt vaguely
Yes.
appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. I think now we're going to take a break. And after that, we will hear a reading from the Gospel according to Roberto.
Our story is about a town, a small town, and the people who live in the town. From a distance, it presents itself like so many other small towns all over the world. Safe, decent, innocent. Get closer, though, and you start seeing the shadows underneath. The name of our town is Riverdale. So we enter on two redheaded twins, Cheryl and Jason Blossom. They're driving in their red car with their red hair blowing in the wind, and they are going boating on the 4th of July. But later, we cut to Dilton Doily finding a soaking wet Cheryl at the edge of the Sweetwater River, and we learn that Jason is dead. Police haven't found the body, and it's ruled to be an accident. And all the people in the town have their own opinions on what happened to Jason. Cheryl's story is that she dropped a glove in the water, and Jason bent over to get it, but he tipped their boat and drowned.
I feel like this intro is so like perfect for this show. I mean to me at this point it's very clearly invoking the show Twin Peaks, but it
Mm-hmm.
does it in its own way. The whole like it's so stylized. The music that plays when the you see them driving in the car together and then heading to the river, just the way they're dressed, the like the bizarre like intimacy between Cheryl and Jason as they're getting on the boat, like it's all just like perfect. The way she looks when Dilton Doily finds her, the way Dilton Doily looks, he's just like it's so campy and amazing.
I agree. Like, again, this cold open is just so unironically good.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely evokes Twin Peaks vibes. That image of Cheryl just like this drowned rat with her wet hair, makeup running down her face. But she and Jason had been dressed in these like perfect all white outfits. It's just such an iconic image, and really, like, if you've seen the show before and you know what shot we're talking about, it's probably appearing like clear as day in your mind. It's
Hmm.
just such good visual storytelling. And then
Hmm.
with very little dialogue or anything from the other characters, like you see the other townspeople reacting to this news, watching them find Cheryl and the crime scene and all of that. And you learn so much already about like all these different characters' relationships to Jason and how they're feeling about the situation. You maybe get some ideas in your mind of like who might be a suspect, because even though they say it's not a suspicious or a murder, you get the feeling right away that it is. um and then also you have the opening narration, who which is from Jughead, who we will not
Do
even
we
meet
know
until much
that?
later in the episode.
Do we know that in the narration, or is that not revealed? I
It's
think we see him briefly.
we don't see him until
Oh, we don't.
much later, but I
I
feel
thought you see
like
him like putting like a computer in his back. I don't know. Like I thought you saw him for like a split second, but maybe I'm misremembering.
hmm I don't remember that, but you could be right. But yeah, it's already Jughead's the one telling the story, and he does a great job. I also feel like even if you were watching this for the first time, like as it was coming out and you didn't know it was Jughead, the casting of this show was so high profile, and especially casting Cole Sprouse as Jughead. I feel like he was like the most famous of all of the main actors. So you would hear his voice and you'd be like, oh, great, this is Cole Sprouse, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, really good storytelling right from the get. And then we cut from there to, as Jughead puts it, a new mystery rolling into town, which is not the murder of Jason Blossom, but the arrival of Veronica Lodge and her mom, Hermione. And they move into a new fancy apartment in a high rise building. And we meet Smithers, who's their doorman, but also kind of plays like a butler role in their lives. I mean, his name is Smithers, which is iconic. Um, and we learn a little bit about the Lodge family. So Veronica is the daughter of Hiram Lodge, who is a disgraced businessman. He's very wealthy, but he's recently been arrested for embezzlement. So it seems like all of their fortune is likely gone. Um, they're moving back to Riverdale because that's where Hermione, her mom, grew up, and they're hoping to get away from all of the chaos and the drama of New York City, which is where they were living previously. They are not going to find it very easy because Riverdale is a small town. Everybody in the town already knows all about Hiram, all about Hermione. So it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to fit in than they're expecting in this scene.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very funny. There's this element of the show where most of the characters are so like flanderized almost from the get-go, like where like she's getting out of the car and she's talking to Veronica and she's like, it's in my name. It's, it's not much, but it's pied de terre. And quality always. And her and Veronica say quality in unison. They're both dressed in like matching outfits with pearls. It's like, it's like they're so specific and like crazy. They're like working like just French, descriptions of things into their everyday speech. And it's I think great. Like the characters just like exactly what they're about the second they show up on screen.
It's so true. And I feel like shorthand for rich in Riverdale is just like inserting these French phrases into your everyday
Yeah.
vocabulary. Like Cheryl does that a lot too. And it's like, where does that come from? Why, Roberto? I ask for the first of thousands of times on
I
this
don't know.
show.
I mean, I think it's this like worldliness of like the 1950s he's evoking, and we're uh we'll get to this, but like yeah, like there everything's very like old fashioned coded in like the weirdest way in this show, but like it's
Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you get to it, but it's like there's definitely like a this is what people thought rich people were like in like 1957, and
Yeah, let's
that's
dive
what the
into
show.
that
Yeah.
because the show is very ambiguous on time, and I feel like it gets more ambiguous on time as the show goes on. But in this episode, they're actually more specific than they will be moving forward. In the very next scene, we meet Betty, and we meet her tokenized gay best friend, Kevin Keller. And in that scene, Kevin describes Archie as most millennial straight guys. So, like, right away, we're like, okay, Archie's a millennial. He's in high school. This is the time that we're being set in. But that doesn't always feel true throughout the show. And then, not to already dive into the other Archieverse shows, but in Sabrina, they're even more vague on time because they're like using a landline house phone and they're not really ever seen with a laptop. So Jughead always has a laptop. So in that way, this show is a little more set in its time, but it does feel very vague.
Yeah, there's random modern technology will insert itself, and as we'll see later, like there are even way later in the show, they like force themselves to be like, well, this was what 40 years in the past look like, and this is this year, and they'll tell you this is the year they're in. But yeah, like everyone's driving cars that look
Right.
insanely
Like
old.
Archie's like, oh, I have an old car, but his old car is a jalopy, which
Yeah.
is not in this episode yet, but you got to call it out. I mean, it's completely unhinged. And then later when he goes to the war, like what war? We'll get more
Hmm.
confused as the
Well,
show goes on.
absolutely, but just even for the time being, the whole style of the show, the fact that everyone's like obsessed with the diner in town, like all this weird like super retro feeling stuff that is, but it's supposed to be like modern times. The show is incredibly stylized in the weirdest and craziest and possible way, and in a way where they're like, we're not going to explain this ever. Don't worry about it.
Yes. And I
Just
love it.
live
You
in
don't
this
have to
world.
explain to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to wonder, but like literally don't tell me. I love it
Yeah.
so much. So, in this scene with Betty and Kevin, they're basically talking about how Betty and Archie are longtime best friends. But Betty has always sort of held a candle for Archie and is wanting to be more than friends. And Kevin's basically encouraging her to shoot her shot. And Betty and Archie are childhood best friends. They're also next door neighbors. And Betty's bedroom window, very like conveniently and quintessentially, looks directly into Archie's bedroom window. So they're looking out her window into Archie's window. We get, I'm pretty sure, the first instance of Archie. Well, we get the first instance of Archie, period. And he's already shirtless, which will come up in the drinking game many times. And basically, Kevin's like, this is great. Archie got hot over the summer. So it's absolutely time to shoot your shot. And next, Betty and Archie do have plans. They go to the best and only diner in town, which is Pop's Chocolate Shop, where your milkshake always must match the color of your hair. And Archie reveals over hamburgers that he's been writing songs all summer and now he wants to be a musician. And Betty's really excited. She's really encouraging of the idea, but she does ask what becomes the pivotal question of this season of Riverdale, which is, but what about football? Are you going to have time for football and music? Which, great question. This sends Archie into an absolute fucking tailspin that will last far too long.
Yeah, the Archie music and football thing, it's like, I don't know, it's the very 50s coded element of it. There's a retro expectation of like what the world should be like. Like if you play football, you don't do music. Music's, for, artsy types. And it's not for you, Archie. No, no. And he's like conflicted about like being able to pursue music, and he feels like he seems vaguely ashamed of it the entire episode. And it'll only, although he's very upfront with most people about loving music, so I guess only to specific people. But yeah, the Archie music football dichotomy and internal struggle is very funny on some level.
It really is. And like, on one hand, it feels like he ends up making a huge problem over something that really doesn't need to be a problem. Like, I feel like a lot of high school students do have, especially a high school student like Archie, who's like very privileged and middle class, and, he has everything that he needs. So he does have the bandwidth and time to have two hobbies. Like, it doesn't feel that extreme. But yeah, for him, it's an absolute mind fuck. So they're talking about this. And then Betty decides it's time to shoot her shot. She's like gearing herself up, ready to go. And then enter Veronica Lodge. She walks into Pops in an iconic black cape, which will be the first of many iconic cape moments during this program. And Archie immediately is like, who's that? Looking at her. Betty sees this happening and drops the subject. And Veronica comes over to talk to Betty and Archie. We learn that they're all going to be sophomores at Riverdale High this year. So again, they're setting us in like a specific time, which is great. And Veronica goes on to make a Truman Capote joke, which Archie does not get, but he does laugh at it, which I find very funny.
I disagree with this. I got the sense that Archie got the joke and was like playing it up because he's clearly smitten with Veronica. And Betty was like a little annoyed that he liked the joke that much, like to clearly do that. I got a different vibe from that scene.
Oh, Betty was
My
definitely annoyed, but I feel
Betty's
like
annoyed,
Archie.
but I like, it's like when you laugh harder at a joke of someone you like. Like I got the sense that like Archie got it, but he was leaning into it. Wasn't that funny. He was just leaning into it too hard. That was the energy I got from Archie. Because in this episode, this is like maybe the smartest Archie will ever be on the show. Because he's like, oh, I was writing lyrics while I was working construction. And then I was writing poems in my head. And then I went home and I realize they were lyrics to songs or whatever. Like this is the deepest and most profound Archie will ever be in the show. It is downhill from here. He will be as dumb as a post in 3 seasons, but for the
I
time
agree.
being,
This is the smartest he ever is. But I think he still doesn't get the Truman Capote joke. I think he laughs because he wants to impress Veronica. Because you can see, like, the smile on his face and then just, like, nothing going on behind the eyes. And, like, maybe the listeners can weigh in. Do you guys think that Archie got the Truman Capote joke? Either way, he's laughing.
yeah.
So we move to school, first day of school, and we meet Reggie and Moose, who are Archie's football bro friends. And Reggie's really excited about football and the new school year. And he asks Archie if. So Archie spent the summer working for his dad. His dad owns a construction business, and Archie was working on building houses all summer, which is presumably why he got hot. And Reggie asks Archie if he tapped any cougar ass this summer while building houses. Um,
This didn't make any sense to me. Like, while you're building the house, you're gonna run into a cougar. I didn't understand it at all. It was a confusing thing to say. It was a
I
confusing
think he was
conclusion
implying
to.
like the women who own the houses would be at the construction site and like ready to have sex with all of the high school construction workers. But it's a really like, how is that your first question, Reggie?
Yeah, it was. I didn't understand his train of thought. It was very confusing.
Really gives Archie a run for his money for the world's best himbo award.
They just like were like what it's almost like if you just plugged in like douchey jock boy coming back from summer question, and it was just like it just spat out the words like cougar, house, summer vacation. Like that's like those are the words that came out, and it was like ass, and then it was just like, all right, I guess this is what his lines are for this episode. We have no choice.
Maybe Roberto just thinks this is what straight men talk about.
Maybe.
So after this weird question,
it's really like a parody of what a straight man might say, like a straight high school boy would want to talk about. It's like borderline insane. Like it doesn't really make sense, but it's like almost like it's like you could almost see the reverse of like what would a like straight man think two gay men would talk about after summer
yeah.
break. Like it's like that level of crazy, but it's great because it's that level of crazy.
Oh, no, we love it. Yeah. So after this unhinged question, we cut to a school assembly that Cheryl is running. And we quickly learn that Cheryl is going to leverage her status as a twin widow to basically run the school for the entire school year, which it sounds like she was kind of like a popular it girl before being a twin widow, but now she's just dialing it up a huge notch, which is insane because she's only a sophomore, allegedly. So she hosts this school assembly. Basically, it's in honor of Jason. She lets us know that she's asked the school board to still let the homecoming dance happen, and it's what Jason would have wanted and this whole thing. And while she's giving this speech, we see Archie making some intense eye contact with Miss Grundy, who's the school music teacher. And then we get a flashback and we learn that Archie actually did tap some cougar ass this summer, and he spent the whole summer having an affair with Miss Grundy.
Is she a cougar?
No, she's the teacher. Like
She's
this
like not. She's like 25 or something in this show. Like she's not that old.
Yeah, well, in the comics, she's literally this old
she's
lady.
Like an old woman. In this show, she's like 25.
Yeah, and like her name is Geraldine Grundy. And in the comic books, she looks like a woman who would be named Geraldine Grundy. But in
That's
the
an old woman's
show,
name. Sorry to all the Geraldine Grundys listening, but
sorry, Geraldine. But in the show, she is like very young and like probably would be someone who would be considered attractive, but it's not like it's his teacher. And throughout the series, I feel like they're really underplaying the fact that this teacher is preying on her 15, 16-year-old student. And we're just kind of supposed to treat Miss Grundy like any other girlfriend of Archie's. And it's real icky.
Yeah, it's real icky. It's not good. And it's also like uh, uh I think eventually, as I recall, it becomes more of a problem, but like, and they seem to tacitly acknowledge it's a problem and seem aware of that, even in the way they're like staring at each other across the gym. But yeah, there's something very odd about this show compared to other CW shows I've watched. Not that I've watched a ton, but the there's like Archie is like so heavily objectified in this show compared
Hmm.
to other characters. Like he's like the women are far less objectified than he is, and the women are pretty heavily objectified in this show. So
Yes.
there's something like they really just go all out on being like Archie is the hottest thing ever. Everyone wants him. Men, women, teachers, everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be 8 seasons of Archie equals man meat.
100%.
And then we hit the title card, which is at 13 minutes and 42 seconds, which will come up in the drinking game rules at some point, but this is a pretty long one. And we almost made it to that 15-minute mark,
Almost. Yeah.
but not quite.
Uh Not quite. Yeah. But yeah, the title card, very iconic. I always like when it comes up. So it plays a surprisingly, I think we didn't even realize at the time how like interesting of a role it will play down the road on the
Yes,
show.
completely
But
agreed.
yeah.
So after our title card, we learn a little bit more about Archie's story. So basically, his storyline throughout this episode is he wants music lessons, but Miss Grundy is the music teacher, and she's the only person seemingly in the entire town who offers music lessons of any kind. And he has already tapped Josie and the Pussycats for help. He asks them if they'd be willing to maybe like try out and play some of his songs and see how they're landing, but they basically tell him to like kindly fuck off. He is accused of staring at their ears. They call him Justin Gingerlake. And basically, they say, we only play our own original music and you can go now. So he's going to end up spending the rest of the episode trying to get Miss Grundy to give him these private lessons. And throughout their conversations about this, we learn that they were actually together on the morning of the 4th of July when Jason went missing and turned out to be dead. And we learned that they were at the bank of Sweetwater River canoodling and they heard gunshots. And Archie, part of the reason that he's been so tortured all summer is because he hasn't been able to tell anybody what he heard. And Archie is a very like moral by the book guy. So hearing these gunshots and knowing that he can contribute to like solving the mystery around Jason, but he can't say anything is like eating away at him inside. But Miss Grundy is basically telling him like, no, no, you need to not say anything because then people will know that we were together. And like any predator, she, is basically telling Archie that he needs to be quiet and that he'll be in just as much trouble as she is and all that kind of thing. Meanwhile, we learn that he has made the varsity football team this year thanks to presumably Jason dying because he's given Jason's old number, which by the way is 9, which is my lucky number. And somehow I didn't notice that until this time. So that was very fun for me.
It's Nick Foles' number too.
I
Go Birds.
know. And like, did we win the Super Bowl because of me that year. Yeah. So you're welcome, Philadelphia.
Thanks, Philly.
So Archie gets number 9. He should be really excited, but he's feeling conflicted because he's not sure if he's going to have time for both music and football. So basically, he lies to his football coach and says that he's too busy working at his dad's construction business to play. Uh, and then the football coach calls his dad and says, "Why are you making him work at your construction site? He could be playing varsity football." And the dad is like, "What are you talking about?" So then we get a little intro to Archie's dad. His name is Fred Andrews. And Fred sits down Archie and basically is like, we think that Archie's going to be in huge trouble for this, but Fred has the most like understanding, cool response to this situation. He basically tells Archie that he'll support him in whatever he decides to do, but he just doesn't want Archie to lie about it, which totally reasonable request, Fred. And for some reason, Archie just isn't ready to tell Fred about the music thing, which is presumably why he lied. But uh yeah, like really nice response from him, I thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of great dads in this show. Several bad ones, but many great ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of dads, good and bad. This is a good one. Um we learn a lot about Fred in this episode. We also see a little bit of his construction business because at one point Hermione comes in and asks about a bookkeeping job. And he says no because he's like, your husband was just arrested for embezzlement. I can't have his wife keeping the books at my business, which totally fair, Fred. And we also learned that he and Hermione dated in high school before she got together with Hiram. So there's some tension bubbling in the air between those two. Meanwhile, with Betty and Veronica, Betty is helping Veronica get settled in at school. It's pretty obvious right away that Veronica likes Archie, but when she learns that Betty likes him too, she immediately steps down because she is a girl's girl. And we do get a little more of Cheryl as well. She comes up to Betty and Veronica at lunch, and she wants Veronica to try out for the River Vixens, which is Riverdale's cheerleading squad, of which Cheryl is the captain. Betty would also love to make the team, and she did audition last year, but she was rejected because Cheryl said that she was too season 5 Betty Draper, which is so mean, but also sets us in a specific time. It's after season 5 of Mad Men.
Yes, and I think another aspect of this too that's a little interesting is the Betty clearly glowed up during the summer too, but it's sort of implied. It's not like said specifically here, and it's interesting like how Betty is literally the girl next door in this episode, and she's treated as just like chop liver for like most of the show, really. But and like juxtaposed with how horny everyone is for Archie. It's like it's like insane that it's like no one even acknowledges the fact that Betty, like, I guess has, is now like quote unquote hot enough or whatever that means to join the cheerleader squad. And the only way we know that is because of this weird comment that she says someone else made to her last year, right? Because like
Yeah,
that's the season of Mad Men. For people who aren't familiar with Mad Men, it's the season of Mad Men. Uh, Betty, Don's wife in the show, the basically the main female role, one of the main female roles, gains a bunch of weight because I think she's dealing with like depression or something. And it's I think they put January Jones in a fat suit for that entire season. Uh,
yeah, I think they did. And like, oh my God, the way that people were I mean, people are fat phobic now, but the way that people were so much more fat phobic back then, even like, what was this, 10, 15 years ago? Like, there were all these memes about like Fat Betty, and it was a whole thing. And oh, actually, I think they did. I could be wrong about this, but I think they did that storyline because January Jones was pregnant in real life.
uh,
And
yeah.
they like built the fat suit around her actual pregnant body. But even in the fat suit, like, she is not fat. So I
I
don't
don't
know.
really remember. It's been a minute since I watched Mad Men, but I understood the reference, but it's definitely like I got the the impression I got from it was that it was like because doesn't someone say she's season one Betty or something later or
Yeah,
something?
I think later Veronica goes like, "Oh no, you're giving season 1 Betty."
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the it's an odd it's a very specific reference that I feel like if you hadn't watched Mad Men 15 years ago you wouldn't get, but
There's a
here we
lot
are.
of references. Like,
Hmm.
this show kind of gives a Gilmore Girls thing sometimes of they make all of these references to things outside of the show, and it's probably like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Gilmore Girls used to give in if you bought the DVD box set, which obviously I did because I was a white woman in high school during that time. And you would buy the DVD box set and it would come with a little glossary of all of the references in the show that they make, like the pop culture references. So if you didn't get it, you could like look in the glossary, which was very cute. Uh I highly doubt that a box set of this show would offer such a thing, but they do sprinkle in a lot of things. Like, for example, you do have to know about Fabergé eggs to fully watch this show.
True. Spoilers.
Spoiler alert. So, yeah, Betty gets this very mean comment. She's, by the way, Lily Reinhart is absolutely gorgeous, and it makes zero
Yeah.
sense that she's being treated this way.
Yeah.
But basically, Veronica's solution is she's going to show Betty some of her moves, and they're going to try out together. So at the audition, they do their little thing together, their little cheer. It's fine. But Cheryl is looking for more heat and more fire. And Veronica's like, don't worry, I got this. And she just kisses Betty. Instead of like doing any additional cheerleading or moves or anything like that, she just like immediately goes for the kiss. And then Cheryl says, faux lesbian kissing hasn't been taboo since 1994. Like, you're going to have to do better than that, which honestly, fair.
Yeah. It was I remember thinking my like memory of this scene was it was way more like impressive or something in the moment, but like now watching now I'm like they kind of do like a so-so, cheer routine. I don't know anything about cheerleading, but it wasn't like the TV show went all out to give them like crazy moves, like crazy great moves or anything. And then they just like stop after getting feedback, they just like turn to each other and kiss. Like it's
Yeah,
not even
it's
like
kind
there's
of
no build
lame.
up. Yeah.
And it doesn't really feel super like cheerleadery either. It's very
No.
like meh.
I'm not
Um,
sure how that would work in terms of like inspiring a football team. I feel like it would be a distraction, if anything.
who's to say? It is kind of a red herring though, because throughout this episode, of all the main characters, Betty and Veronica are the two that spend the most time together. They have the deepest bond. And there are times, including this kiss, where it feels like maybe the two of them will end up together. But that's just not the way that the show takes us at this time. But it is a shame because it does very much in the pilot and maybe the pilot only feel like they're kind of leaning that way. And then that's just not where it goes. But Cheryl is also disappointed by the kiss. She basically says, you're going to have to do better than that. And she wants to see more fire. She wants to see them like angry and riled up. So she proceeds to air out all of the dirty laundry about Jason, her dead twin brother, and Polly, who's Betty's older sister. And we learn that the two of them dated. They had a very toxic relationship. It seems like Polly was really invested in the relationship, and Jason maybe could kind of care less. We also learned throughout the episode that Polly was getting a lot of pressure from their mom throughout the whole thing. And it sounds like it was a really difficult year for her. And Cheryl brings up that now Polly is living in a group home, So things are not going so great for her. And she really just brings all of this up to try to get a rise out of Betty, but she's not super successful. Betty's like clenching her fists and she's like digging her nails into her palms. And you can tell she's angry on the inside, but on the outside, she remains very composed. She has a very like gentle response to the whole thing. And Cheryl's disappointed by that. So she basically says, only Veronica's making the team. Sorry, Betty. Better luck next year. And then Veronica gives this whole big monologue, which is basically all about how she and Betty are a matching set. And she says, you wanted fire? Sorry, Cheryl Bombshell, but my specialty is ice. And every time I watch this monologue, I think back to when I was in acting school. And this would have been absolutely the monologue that somebody would have cut from this and used as like an audition piece. And that's all I can think about when I'm watching this. And it's probably the monologue that they had Camila Mendez use as her audition piece when she auditioned for Veronica, I'm guessing.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. It's definitely it's a very like Veronica moment. I found myself liking Veronica a lot in this first episode. It's
Me
like
too.
she's I feel like she has a lot of positive impulses. And she, even despite being a bit pretentious, she she walks a fine line, Camila Mendez, as an actress. Like she could be way more pretentious, way more overbearing, and she's somehow like reins it back in, or like prevents it from becoming like a weird, like negative, toxic thing. Even but while still doing a lot of things that would a different performance would make come off as toxic or pretentious or something. So I seem to be liking Veronica more than I remember.
Yes, totally agreed. So after that little performance, Cheryl has to concede. Betty makes the team as well. So our two freshly minted River Vixens are celebrating, getting their uniforms, and they run into Archie, who Veronica greets as Teen Outlander. And basically, the girls decide that they're both taking him to the dance, whether he likes it or not. So he has to agree. And as they're getting ready for the dance and, handling all the news of the day, Betty goes home and her mom basically lays on the pressure, says she disapproves of everything Betty's doing. She doesn't want her to join the River Vixens or be friends with Veronica or go to the dance. All of it's bad and like a huge distraction from getting into college or whatever. And Betty seems to stand her ground and really tell her mom, no, this is what I'm doing and this is what I want. And it's notable because even though this is our first glimpse at their relationship, it feels like this is probably the first time that Betty has ever had the moxie to stand up to her mom in this way. So she does make it to the dance. We get to the dance and we are greeted with giant pictures of Jason Blossom just adorning the entire gym everywhere you look, which is very funny to me. We get another speech from Cheryl where she announces herself as the honorary chairperson and de facto queen of the dance, which is, we will learn, a very Cheryl thing to
I
do.
I thought that was very funny. Madeline Pesh is great as Cheryl, and her character has all these like fantastic, like borderline throwaway lines that are hilarious, especially in this episode.
It's so good. And I feel like Madeline Petch is like the only person who could do this, of saying these like completely unhinged lines, like I'm the de facto queen, and just throwing it away like, it's no big deal. She really walks that line in a really lovely way. And it's so much fun. And another one of those lines comes up in a moment here because she introduces Josie and the Pussycats, who, despite allegedly only playing original music, they're going to cover a song at Cheryl's request. And that song is All Through the Night by Cyndi Lauper. And the reason that they're playing the song is because it's the song that was playing when Jason and Cheryl were conceived, which, very weird that Cheryl knows that. Very weird that she knows that, and that's the reason that she wants it played. And another just like, oh yeah, and this is the song that was playing when Jason and I were conceived. I hope you like it.
It's good world building too, because I think there's been allusions to the fact that the Blossom family is, like, weird and terrible, and that's like a good, like, weird, like, yeah, there's something, like, inappropriate that your kids would know that kind of a thing, and would be so brazen as to, like, mention not only mention it, but, like, feature it at a dance themed around your dead brother. Like, it's very odd.
Yeah, which to be clear, we love the Blossoms. Um, at some point, we'll talk more about this, but the characters that we cosplay are Jason and Cheryl. And we've also both dabbled in Jughead, but mainly it's Jason and Cheryl. So I'm sure we're going to give the Blossoms a lot of screen time on this show or airtime on this show for being so truly unhinged. And I'm really looking forward to that. So, in a very typical chaotic Blossom family move, Cheryl decides to host an after party. And at the after party, her goal is basically just to fuck shit up for the whole Archie, Veronica, Betty love triangle that she sees forming. So, immediately they get to the party and they're going to play 7 Minutes in Heaven. And sure enough, the people chosen for 7 Minutes in Heaven are Archie and Veronica. So, they go into the closet and instead of kissing, they're just asking these like ask me anything type of questions, but it's all about Betty. So Veronica asks if Archie and Betty have like anything more going on between them, if they're just friends or something more. And Archie says this line, which is really cute, which is, "We're not just friends, we're best friends," which is just so wholesome, but not the answer that Veronica is looking for. So she presses further and basically gets him to admit that he doesn't really feel anything more for Betty and really does only see her as a friend. And that kind of gives Veronica a little bit of a green light because she hasn't been pursuing Archie out of loyalty to Betty. So they do end up kissing in the closet, but they immediately feel super guilty. And when they emerge, sure enough, Cheryl's plan has worked, and Betty has already left the party in tears, knowing that they were probably going to kiss in the closet. So Archie leaves the party to go look for Betty. And he first looks at Pop's chocolate shop, where he doesn't find Betty, but he does find Jughead, who we are finally really meeting for the first time. And Jughead is sitting in a booth at Pop's with his laptop, and he's writing a novel about what happened to Jason over the summer. And Archie basically asks him for advice, and Jughead gives some interesting advice to Archie. He basically says to just talk to Betty and be honest about how he's feeling. And he says, "It would have gone a long way with me," which implies that there's a little bit more going on between Archie and Jughead, that maybe they used to be closer than they are now. But we don't get a ton of more information about their dynamic just yet because Archie goes off to continue looking for Betty. Archie eventually does find Betty outside of her house, where she asks him point blank if they want to give dating a try. And Archie gives a very classic but very annoying answer, which is just, "I'm not good enough for you, and you're just too perfect for me," which I think is kind of supposed to be about how Betty is pressured to be so perfect by her family. Like, there is genuinely a sense of that going on with Betty. Like, she needs to do everything perfect all the time, and it is probably a lot for Archie to handle. But at the same time, that is like so something that a typical fuck boy would say when he's just not that into you but doesn't want to say that. So I found it very
Mhm.
annoying.
I didn't find it annoying for the same reasons. I find Archie annoying in general, because he's, like, earnest, but he's, like, earnest in this, like, incredibly, like, saccharine way that is, like,
Mm,
almost like, it doesn't make sense with every other character in the show. Like, Jughead's this, like, weird, hard-boiled, like, teenager who, like, has such like, a a specific, like, over the top characterization as like this weird outsider kid. Betty is like she's she's earnest in a way, but she's also like you can tell like simmering under the surface. There's like a rebelliousness. Like Veronica's this over the top caricature of a rich girl, but and like every other character is more or less like in there. Like Reggie is like over the top douchey jock guy, but like Archie is like weird and earnest, and he's earnest in this like way that I find often confusing with the rest of the show.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's giving Mary Sue.
Yeah. It's like they made like a boy Mary Sue or something. Like there's something transgressive about that, I guess. I don't know. He works in the show in a weird way, but he's like he I the more I think about it, it's like this show is almost like they took a lot of tropes you would assign to like a female character in a typical high school show and made that and gave them to Archie in like a weird way.
Yeah, it's so true. And I wonder how much of that they felt like they needed to pull from the comics, and then how much of that is their interpretation of Archie just for this.
Yeah.
So we're almost at the end of our episode. We have one more pivotal scene, which is actually about Kevin and Moose. Because Kevin was propositioned by Moose at the school dance. And it seems like he was maybe flashed in the bathroom because Kevin comes out and says that Moose is just like hung like a horse or whatever, which, okay. And the two of them leave the dance and they sneak off into the woods where presumably, well, they're definitely going to do some skinny dipping, but presumably there's also going to be more. Kevin makes a joke about Moose being still in the closet, and we definitely get the sense that this is not Kevin's first time meeting somebody in the woods for sex. But things do not go as planned because they're, taking their shirts off and getting ready to get in the water. And then they find Jason's body washed up on the side of the Sweetwater River. And they immediately notice that there is a gunshot wound right in the middle of his forehead. So
Hmm.
things are not looking like they're lining up with Cheryl's story. And that's the end
Yeah,
of our episode.
he did not drown.
I love this ending of the episode. I feel like it's such a strong bookend with the first couple of scenes, and it really lays the groundwork for the mystery that's going to unfold for the rest of the season in a really lovely way.
Yeah, and I it's definitely like a good teaser. It's a good cliffhanger to end a pilot on. It honestly, the one thing I think about with this episode is maybe like sort of a final thoughts thing is there's so much they packed into this one episode of TV. Like we're introduced, like a murder happens in this like weird way at the beginning of the, or a child dies, a high schooler dies at the beginning of the episode. Then there's like we are introduced to all the characters, the normal high school drama stuff. They go to a dance in the first episode, then they go to an after party. There's like drama that falls out from that, and then we end on a cliffhanger about the murder we saw in the beginning. Like a ton of stuff happens in such a short episode.
Yeah, not to mention that in that time we were introduced to like 25 or 30 characters.
Yeah.
They really cover a lot of ground, and I don't think that our episode wrap ups or summaries will usually be this long, but
Hmm.
there's just so much to cover in the pilot because
Yeah.
they cover
And
so
we're
much ground.
honestly not even we could go for another hour probably, just Meredith and I talking about every little thing we thought about, but
Yeah,
we
it's so
also
true.
got to save it for the subsequent episodes cuz like we could talk about Moose for probably 5 minutes just on Moose cuz
We
there's a
really
lot
could.
there.
We could. There's so much to say about Reggie. There's
Mhm.
also, and this is without being spoilery, if anyone's watching the show for the first time or hasn't seen the show, there's so many parallels between what's happening here and what's happening in the final season.
Mhm.
And man, I can't wait to get to dive into that stuff because it's really fun.
Yeah.
So, with all of that said, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, please open your rule hymnals for the drinking game. And we're back. Please open your rule hymnals for the drinking game.
Rule hymnal, verse 1. Here is the rules to add to your rule book this week. First, Rule 30. The first rule triggered. Jughead opens the episode by saying Riverdale is a town of lost souls. I chalked that up to Jughead's intro in this episode. The second rule triggered was Rule 2. Gratuitous Blossom drama. I considered this Cheryl being found looking like a drowned rat by the Sweetwater River, and Jason dying.
and the twin widow nonsense that ensues afterwards.
Yeah, maybe you can add. Maybe I missed that one. Add twin widow nonsense. I consider Blossom drama. We can litigate this maybe at some later point, but I consider Blossom drama to be drama between blossoms, not just drama triggered by a blossom. Otherwise, you would almost never stop drinking.
Yeah, we got it. Well, when we feature that rule and dive into it more, we'll talk about that, because I've got some opinions about Blossom family drama.
Yeah. Our next rule is Kevin Sploosh, a rule I still don't fully understand, but I just chalked it up to Kevin appearing on screen in his first scene of this episode. Neither of us, as a spoiler, neither of us created this rule, and we might need to have the person on who created it at some point to explain it to us.
Kevin Sploosh. And just so the listener knows, at some point we'll feature and do a deep dive on each individual rule. So we will get to these and explain them more.
Yeah.
Kevin Sploosh is one of the most confusing rules in this whole game. Yeah, friend of the podcast, Tim, created this rule. Tim, what does it mean? I kind of also got Kevin Sploosh vibes from this, but more from the final scene where they're in the woods together.
Maybe. I still don't understand the rule, so
me neither.
Next is Archie shirtless. There were 2 instances of Archie being shirtless. It's a very objective rule. It's a binary. He's either shirtless or not shirtless.
And it's rule number 1.
And we'll get into it more later. But it's the first scene with where Betty and Kevin ogle him from across the street through his window. And then when you see him coming back from doing construction work in a flashback, and Grundy eye fucks him from within her car, and he's lifting up his shirt to wipe sweat off his face.
That's right. So that's 2 drinks.
2 drinks. Next, this rule will kill you this episode, and it is Rule 34. Archie acknowledges football or music.
Oh no, we're gonna die.
And the fact that it's Rule 34 should tell you we made this rule way after season 1.
Way too late.
So we did not
have to watch season 1 with this rule before.
Yeah. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 instances of Archie acknowledging football or music in this episode.
No!
At 4:50, he's composing lyrics. At 7:40, he has football tryouts which is in quotes because I think it's him meeting with Grundy. I should have probably elaborated in my notes on that. Next is 11. Archie has I think this is him talking about songs with Betty. Then at 14:10, he wants to talk to Grundy about music. Then at 16:40, he plays a song for his friends that he wrote. And then at 19 minutes, he asks Grundy for music lessons again. And then at 24 minutes, he has actual football practice where he gets Jason's number. Then at 30 minutes and 5 seconds, he plays guitar on the porch, and then his dad confronts him about the whole football versus construction job lie that he dug himself into. And then finally, Betty asks him when they get to the dance what his heart says about football or music. So
Oh
it was
no.
a football. I probably missed some. I probably didn't get every one.
Well, yeah,
So
there comes a point where you've had so many drinks that how would you
how
even be
would you
able to
even know?
notice?
Yeah. So that's Archie acknowledges football and music. The next
Great.
rule is do you have any thoughts on that, Meredith? Archie, football and music.
I mean, I'm looking forward to dying,
Yeah.
you know?
It's yeah. The next rule is a character makes a pop culture reference that makes you say, "What the fuck?" Now
We got some of those.
we got a few of those in this episode. I was pretty liberal, but I don't consider it to literally be saying "what the fuck," more just you being like sort of confused or incredulous about it. So the first one is the "I'm breakfast at Tiffany's." And this place is in cold blood from Veronica in Pop's chocolate shop at 6:30.
For any Archies out there, that's the Truman Capote joke.
Oh, what did I say?
No, you said the right thing, but just that was the Truman Capote. Like if
Yes,
people don't
yes.
know that, yeah,
Yeah, so Truman Capote wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's and In Cold Blood,
yeah.
for people not aware. He Then there's Josie calling Archie Justin Gingerlake, which was confusing as hell.
I
Then there
loved
was
it.
at 1850, I forget. I think it's when Veronica is consoling Betty, like probably shortly after calling her season one Betty Draper. Is it Betty and Betty?
Yeah, it's Betty and Betty. And that's
Hmm.
one of the drinks, I think, for this. That certainly made me say, what the fuck?
Yeah, but that made sense to me. That could easily be it. One, two. You're right. So I got Queen Bey of this Drab Hive, which I thought was a Beyonce reference,
I think
right?
it is, and
Yeah,
it felt weird.
yeah. It felt weird when she was saying it. It felt out of place considering 99% of the other references are like fairly dated at this point. Then there's Teen Outlander at 2650. Then at
Yep.
3255, the iconic quote, in my opinion, of "Can't we, in a post James Franco world, liberate ourselves from all these things?" I will point out, um, I think she also mentions Ansel Elgort in this episode. So
Oh, I think she does too. So I think that's
a
another
lot of
one. But the
a lot
James
of
Franco thing, maybe I'm a himbo for not knowing this, but like, I didn't even get that because she says it in response when they're walking into the dance and Archie's talking about, again, football or music. And she says, yeah, like, can't we in this post James Franco world be all things? And like, does James Franco play sports?
I don't think it's about James Franco playing sports. I think it's that he stars in a lot of like, or at least probably at this point in his career, he doesn't really do anything anymore because he got canceled or something. But I think it's because he was doing like screwball comedies at this point in his career. Like he's in Pineapple Express and
Right.
some other of those like what's his name? It's like Seth Rogen type
Yeah,
comedies.
yeah. Right, but
Uh,
was he doing another thing other than that?
but
Because
he
that's what
but he
I
was
know him from.
but he was also doing, I think, like critically praised like dramatic roles as well. I think it's sort of that he's considered the
So
type of
his
actor who can do both. I don't think he's like a jock. I mean, in Freaks and Geeks, he's like, I think he's like like kind of a stoner character, if I'm remembering correctly. In Freaks and Geeks, that's like what
so
he broke
his
out
all
with.
things is just acting and acting.
Yeah, it's acting in dramas and acting in comedies, I think. Didn't he? He
Okay.
also like he also
I'm
like
looking it up by the way if you hear me
I don't think
typing.
he's an athlete. I don't think he's like a professional athlete or anything. You're right. It doesn't make any sense. And then the final uh, pop culture reference that made me say "what the fuck" is the not so indecent proposal line from Archie when he finally convinces Grundy to give him music lessons at the dance. It was weird because he is acknowledging that this woman was statutory raping him. and like referencing it and trying to convince her to give him music lessons. I thought it was a weird reference.
It is weird.
Okay. Any word on James Franco?
No, I just pulled up James Franco's Wikipedia, and it's got, here are his talents according to Wikipedia: acting, making movies, and sexual misconduct.
I mean, that's sort of a triple threat, I guess. Emphasis on threat. It's like lowercase triple, uppercase threat, like a triple threat.
Exactly what Archie Andrews, wholesome little Mary Sue, like
Yes.
angel cherub, is aspiring to be.
Yeah, 100%. I guess.
Like, what do you mean, Veronica? That might, to me, that is the most what the fuck out of all of these.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
no, that one.
Take the biggest sip of your drink for that one.
And Veronica will be the worst offender for this rule. Like, I'm telling you now, listeners, just get ready to drink whenever she starts talking, because she makes pop culture references that don't make any goddamn sense, like every other time she's on screen. It's very confusing.
It's so true. Oh, man.
Next, we have Rule 13, a cover of a song in the show. It counts if it's either diegetic or non-diegetic, aka the characters can hear it or the characters can't hear it. I forget which is which, but it's one of those. So both times it's Josie and the Pussycats covering a song when you first meet them and then later at the dance. Next is Rule 95, which I did not expect to. I think we barely ever used this rule because it's one of the last rules we ever made. Black characters outnumber white characters in a scene. And it's Josie and the Pussycats and Archie in the scene where they call him Justin Gingerlake. There's the three Pussycats and Archie. So, black characters outnumbering white characters.
We made this rule. It was one of the last rules that we make. And I think it was in a moment where we were wondering, where did all the black people go? Because in the later seasons, like, again, not to give too much of a spoiler, but you really don't see Josie and the Pussycats anymore. Like, a lot of the black characters who have appeared throughout the show are kind of gone, except for two characters who we haven't met yet, who don't usually appear together. And I think we were feeling, just like, where did everybody go? And in this season, we have a lot of scenes with Josie and the Pussycats, and they're very much usually together as like a trio. So I think this rule is going to fuck us up.
Yeah, there's a couple rules that like we basically forgot what season 1 was like, and it's going to destroy us, including and it's coming for us in this episode.
Yeah.
Next is Rule 7. An adult finds Archie attractive at 13 minutes. I wasn't going to do every instance of like weird, rapey, Grundy Archie scenes, but Grundy eye fucking Archie in the gym I felt was the most endemic of this rule, because there's a lot of like allusions to it. I think it's going to be a once an episode for a while this season, for the next few episodes at least. If for anyone who's watched at least the first episode, you'll realize that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
This rule probably comes up most episodes.
Yeah. At least for, I don't know if it's the whole first season, but it's definitely a lot of it.
And later too. There's usually an adult who finds Archie attractive.
Yep. Next is maybe the most important rule, one of the most important rules in the game, the second most maybe important rule. There's a most important rule that we will never get to, but we will talk about at some point. Rule 21, this is the second most important one though. Rule 21-1/Rule 90. Finish your drink if the title card shows up 10 minutes or later into the episode. The title card was at 13:42 this episode, so it is a finish your drink when the title card shows up. this will happen less often than you think, but it is in this episode it is way over the line. Originally we had it at 15 minutes and it just never happened. And this is what about as close as you get. It might happen like once at 15 minutes. But this is our first 10 minutes or later title card in the very first episode. And finally, the final rule in this episode, Rule 99, existing character revealed to be gay, and it is Moose when we find out how horse-like his appendage is at the dance.
Yeah,
From
Rule
Kevin.
99. And that was really one of the last ones. And you're going to have to listen to hundreds of episodes of us if you want to find out why we made that rule. But it will come in sprinkles throughout the earlier seasons too.
Yeah. And so moving on to from the overall rule count, I think we should highlight a rule each episode. And this episode, I think the rule to highlight in verse 1 of the hymnal is Rule 1, Archie is shirtless. And you were the creator of this rule. I think it's important because of just who Archie is as a character. So, Meredith, why did you create this rule?
This rule, I mean, did I technically create this rule? Yes, but also this rule created itself. I mean, this is Rule 1. It's the reason that this drinking game began. And I think it just got to a point where we had watched a certain number of Riverdale episodes, which that certain number might be 1. Like, it might have literally been after this one. But I think he's just shirtless so often, and he is supposed to be this, like, beefy man candy. And the way that they tell that story is by showing his abs. And, yeah, this rule, this is the one that started it all. Like, I don't think I did write this rule. I think it just happened to us. Like,
yeah,
how could you not?
You have the highest rule count by far in our rule spreadsheet. And, but I think a lot of, I mean, I'm sure some of my rules are the same thing, but like a lot of our rules are like one of us said something and the other one just had their phone out and added it to the Discord thread that eventually became the original text of our rule creation list.
Original text is the right way to put it. Like,
yeah,
just like they say, you know, the apostles or whatever didn't write the Bible, like it was God telling them what to write.
Yeah.
I feel that my God, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, worked through us.
He's a prophet
to create.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to say he's God.
No, me neither. I'm redacted.
God is maybe like Roberto Aguirre Sacasa is like the guy who created Archie Comics' one true son.
I mean, if he's not God, who is?
The love between him and the guy who created Archie Comics, who is God, flowed through us. The love that exists between him and whoever created Archie Comics, which is something we should really know.
And whoever is like the creative director of the CW or whatever, the three of them all kissed, and then we were given the divine revelation of we need to drink alcohol every time Archie is shirtless.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, he is. This is a good rule because it is that like perfect amount of it. Just like it happens like probably on average once an episode, like clockwork. Like you might get 2 an episode and not one another episode or something like that. But like on average, Archie is gonna be shirtless like about once an episode. You can almost set your watch to it, and it's like you want like a 1 drink per rule. Like you want rules. A lot of our rules are aspirational. A lot of our rules are us making a weird prediction that doesn't come true. But like this one was accurate, and God bless KJ Appa.
True.
God bless KJ Appa for keeping his body fat percentage that low for 7 years.
And for keeping his hair and eyebrows dyed red for 7 years.
Yes. Okay. So, do you have anything else to say on rule 1, Archie
Just,
shirtless?
I think my main other takeaway from Archie shirtless is, yes, it's a fun one. It comes out often. It's like a very regular rule. But the other thing I really love about this rule is that it's one that you don't really have to think about. Like some of these that come up, you kind of go, like Kevin Sploosh, what does that really mean? And you have
Mm-hmm.
to like think about it. Archie shirtless, you just see the abs and then you're like, all right, I'm drinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
great.
you're so often caught off guard by it too. Like he'll just be like like an episode will just start and he's just like he like sits up in bed and he's just shirtless and it's like all right I guess I'm drinking now. So it'll just be like a hard cut Archie's bedroom. He sits up, no shirt on. But
Yeah.
very frequently it's some adult eye fucking him as well. So it's
Yeah, it's true.
there's a synergy. There's a synergy as well with other rules.
There is, but it really is like the foundational rule. Like, look, if you made it this
Mm-hmm.
far in the episode, but you actually hate us and never want to listen to this again, totally
Mm-hmm.
get it. We are
Yeah.
very annoying.
Uh-huh.
But like, at least you have this rule. And if you play the drinking game with just this one rule, I mean, you'll be missing out on, 99 plus other fun and exciting drinking game rules, but you'll still
Mm-hmm.
have a very fun game.
Okay. I think that's well said. Meredith, it is now that time in the episode where we ask the question, was this episode Riverdale or Liver Fail? Where we decide whether or not the episode was fairly tame and didn't make you drink a lot, or if it got you properly fucked up. So what are your thoughts? Was this episode Riverdale or Liver Fail?
So I was ready to come in and say that this was going to be a Riverdale. I thought with the pilot, how hard can it be? There's not going to be so much going on that it's going to be a ton of rules. But actually, now knowing that the Archie football and music rule came up like 10 times, and the fact that we got that 13-minute and change title card, which is a finish your drink, I'm going to say that this episode is a liver fail.
I also thought it was a liver fail. My final stats had 22 drinks and a finish your drink. So I think that's probably like 3 beers if you watch just for one episode.
Yeah, that's a
If
lot
you're
for a 40-minute
depending what you
episode.
consider depending on how much you're drinking on a drink, but like it's at least 2, so
Yeah.
you're for 42 minutes of your life or whatever, that's a lot of alcohol to consume. So I think this is a liver fail for sure.
Yes, which, like, disclaimer, it's not healthy to drink this much. Legally,
No.
we do not condone it. However,
Yeah.
we did do it. And we're doing it again
100%.
now.
Yeah. So I just want to mention, so now that, this is our first episode more or less in the books, I'm going to go make a hamburger, I think. That feels right,
That does feel right. But are you going to have a chocolate milkshake to match your hair color to go with your hamburger?
Milkshakes are tough for me. And for the listeners, I am allergic to milk, so I have to devise some sort of milkshake, non-dairy milkshake alternative, I guess, by the next episode. So
you don't want to just drink a milkshake just to try it and then die?
Yeah, that's what I'll do. Probably worth it. Yeah. What are you going to do for the rest of your evening?
I don't know. Go to bed.
No. Go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, we have a little bit of a time difference. So we were local when we watched the show together, but now
You're right.
you chaotically chose to move to North Dakota. So it's a little later for me than it is for you. So
true. It is 8 p.m. my time. So
yeah, it's 9 here. I'm probably gonna get screamed at by my dog and then go to bed. Maybe
fun.
Watch the next episode of Riverdale.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to Riverdale, the Drinking Game, the podcast. For next time, please add the following rule to your rule hymnal. Rule 35, the mortician has a scene. And until then, we hope you avoid disaster on your early morning boat rides with your twin.
Goodbye.
We did it!